What we're going to be here for is the energy efficient investments. Terry, you have,
Yes, sir. We have Mike and Todd here to make a presentation to the school board to further discuss the solar/energy project. I noticed too that Todd got a new van today. He also got new boots and new pants today, so we went all in.
wow.
Just too impressed.
I didn't realize we were running a fashion beat.
Well, he showed up. Oh, you gotta look good when you pick up the new van, so.
So again, just Mike Davey with Energy Efficient Investments, and we've been before the school board a couple times now to bring forward potential energy improvement options. There's the spreadsheet that's before you today, and use the 11x17 one. It's a little easier to read. Is very similar to the ones you've already seen. I'd say that there's two differences. One, the solar design was finalized. The price went up a little bit, but the savings went up significantly as well. So the net payback on the solar actually improved a little bit. Right now, we are carrying a 40% rebate from the federal government, which would, to do that, we have to not only do a solar system, but use what's called Buy America, which is all of the products or all of the major components need to be made in the US. One issue that the industry is having in meeting that is that there's a component of the system called the inverters, which take the power from the, it comes out of the solar panels DC, and it needs to be converted to AC in the building. The component that does that, there's no American manufacturer. So the US, our industry is asking for guidance. So we're assuming there's going to be a workaround around that. If there's not, this rebate would be reduced to 30%, but the cost would come down because we're carrying about a 10% cost premium to use American made products. So I don't think it would drastically impact the net impact of the project. It would mean a lower overall cost, a lower rebate, but it wouldn't have a drastic impact on the budget. And we won't know that answer likely before March, but we'll keep working on it. And speaking with Todd, we're leaning toward doing a solar field, and I think is that what this tab is here called model?
Yep, there it is.
Which will be located most likely in this location. What I will say is there's still some engineering that has to be done to get final approval. There's some steps for a project like this. We normally would have to go to Raymond Planning Board. So when this goes to the public, I would like to just leave this, if you decide to, leave it a little bit vague, say, you know, this would be our intended location, but it's subject to approvals. If for some reason someone objected to that site in the town or whatever, you could potentially go back to the roof mounted system. But with this current budget, based on some feedback from Todd, we decided to go with the ground mounted array that under this plan would do about 70% of your current power needs in the district, but we're planning to drop your usage with LED lights by about 22%. So it's going to be do near all your power once we do the LED lights. The other change, so that's one change. The other change is I've added options both with and without wood heat. So I think Todd and Terry went to go visit at least one of our high schools that has wood heat, and I wasn't there. Do you want to give an update on the wood chip?
Yeah, sure. So I went, Tony went, Joe went, we went, saw one too, the same one. We saw them I've seen them before. I think they're a good system. They do require a lot more maintenance, which we're prepared to take on if this goes through, but I think they're a good option for us, and we can have a sense. There are obviously some downsides. We have to have these outdoor silos, which will impact the parking lots and things like that. The maintenance side of it, but I think overall they're.
I guess I'll jump into the numbers. I guess any more discussion on the wood heating? Before we go to-
Is there enough? I was surprised at how massive the thing was. I mean,
Which thing? The silo?
no, the
Boiler.
boiler itself. It was a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be.
Substantially bigger. We've had to have someone come on and look at both boiler rooms, make sure they would fit. We would lose every bit of space in the boiler rooms if they will fit in there. Well, would be another issue, but yeah, they're huge. Very big.
Is the pad or the slab that they're on, are they rated for the weight that boiler?
Well, yeah, I believe they would be fine.
Because I know sometimes you pour up the slab for what's going to be there as opposed to what might be there in the future. So, okay.
That other pump finish.
Okay.
Don't anticipate that being.
I already asked about that while I was there.
Oh, did you?
The weight of it, yeah. It was heavy.
Cast iron, isn't it? Is that what you had said? Cast iron? Yeah.
It's made in Europe, and so it's a long lead item. You know, it would most likely be, we would try and do, depends on, you know, the permitting process. So we really can't order them. And like the silo, like the solar, it really should go to Raymond's planning board because you're adding a silo. My understanding is that planning boards for school districts in general have the ability to advise and give public comment. They generally can't stop a project unless there's some environmental regulation that we're violating. So, but I have seen scenarios where that process brings out opposition or whatever. So we just went through this in Sunapee. We put in a wood. There was a little bit of opposition from the neighbors, but then it was really only, oh, I don't know your password.
That's what it is.
Oh, just say it quietly, just say it.
Bad things out all over the place.
Hard.
We'll just mute it out. You can say it. We'll mute it out later.
That's much more lenient.
Get it.
Well, well, that is up there. First I guess we'll continue the conversation about the wood before we go back to the solar. Any other questions about the wood? Because the board, I think last time we had the conversation, we wanted to go in the direction of the wood. Is that my recollection, right? Okay,
I have a question.
go ahead.
How about the safety? Like, what is, you know, how does that?
So like every boiler system has some safety risk. Now I'll just talk to oil systems. Their biggest risk tends to be leaks and contamination. Like I've seen, you know, the Boston News Station did a report of some homeowner who's had a major oil leak and ended up losing basically their house because it got in, it seeped into the wood and, you know, so oil's big. The current system you have, its risk is a leak, whether it's underground or over a long vacation, a leak in the boiler room that fills it with oil. So that's the biggest risk. The risk with gas is generally explosion. When things go wrong with gas, they
Goes boom. Yeah.
like Lawrence when they have their
Yeah, that was
their
terrible.
pressurization. So
Mhm.
with wood, you have two things. One, you have wood, which is obviously a combustible. It's mostly contained to a silo. So, you know, if there was a fire in the silo, it wouldn't be in the school, it would be outside the school. After that big wood storage area, it becomes pretty conventional boiler technology that's no different than the old boiler per se. Like it's I mean, we've done a lot of them, haven't had any major safety issues on either gas or wood, knock on wood. We haven't had any major safety issues or are not aware of them being any more dangerous than gas, in my opinion. I don't think they all have risks.
As far as day to day, I didn't see anything that stuck out as, oh, this looks dangerous to the user. It was pretty well contained and
Well, you've got like your fire, right? You're burning.
Yeah.
So
in
that's
this
what,
big
like
box.
this,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
like a, like
burning
a
that safe.
glorified wood stove type of thing.
No, it's much similar to an oil boiler. It's much similar to like,
Okay,
to an oil boiler, except it's burning wood that's being
Okay.
slowly fed into it. So it's not like a big residential wood stove
It's,
or like an oil boiler.
I don't know, what do you say it would be? It had to be about 8 feet high.
It was probably like the size of that
Yeah,
projector and
it's,
like back to the
yeah,
wall.
it's
It's
a
big.
lot bigger than a regular oil boiler, especially it's funny because you have this big wood burning one and then you have this little itty bitty propane one right next to it, so.
And they do the same output. They both can heat the same.
Huh.
amount.
wow.
So it takes a lot more surface to heat with wood or surface. But I don't feel that the wood would be less safe. The only thing is it's more maintenance, which we talked about. So the way I've kind of broken the numbers down, just so you know.
Before you go there, Mike, I just wanted to make sure, could you put the picture back up of the topographical? And I just think it's important for people at home, when we're, people driving into the driveway of the high school, it's on the left, proposal would be on the left side. Is that where it's where the field is right now? When I say field, the area where it's mowed down to,
It's before the rock wall path where we had graduation last couple years.
so but it's where your maintenance crew
Yes.
mows and such. Okay, I just wanted to make sure everybody was at home understanding where that was. Go ahead, Tony.
Is the footprint of those panels, that array there, whatever you want to call it, is that, do you manipulate that or is that kind of what it is?
That's what it is. Oh, no, sorry.
Couldn't make
No,
it
I
like-
could- No, I could manipulate. that.
All right.
We could go up or down.
So if you had to go closer to the driveway as
Yes.
opposed to the abutters,
Yes.
you could line it that way down?
Yep.
This is almost the exact same location that the previous company we looked at chose also, so.
Yeah, so we did. What I would recommend though, is that at this stage, whether this is a warrant article or whether this is in the budget, I would say that you could absolutely show this, but just say, subject to planning board review and final design, it might change a little bit the exact location and
One more question.
Yep, go ahead.
So is there a reason why that area is better than, say, straight in front of the building up on the hill there? It's a little less usable.
Right back here.
I think, isn't there more elevation?
There was access to the poles to get the power out. That was another reason we
Yeah.
wanted it there, because the power line's coming in. The goal, we'd have to run a line to that because we're sending power out. So it's much easier doing that than putting it up on the hill. We'd have to run a longer line to get the power out, a longer trench or ditch or whatever you want to call it.
So like we're giving up a lot of good space there.
Yeah, I mean, we could move it as just an added cost of,
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah,
That's a
and
common
I think that
amphitheater.
is something that before, we did a final signed contract or something, we would submit to this board a final location and the planning board, and it would be permitted by the state. And so you'd have a chance to weigh in on alternate locations.
but that was the only reason that was chosen, because it was the cheapest.
And
I mean,
then,
it could be, in theory, it could be moved.
We actually, Todd and I, if we were just doing the high school, we were going to put it more on the upper side. When the plan was just to do the high school,
Right, like right up here.
yeah, right outside, I don't know where it's at. Yeah, right up here. That's,
And honestly, if the board was like, they want to preserve this for some future field, and we only want to deal with the high school's load, we could put in a smaller system back there. But right, if we're trying to pick up the district's load, or we could potentially look at doing a system at the middle school and segregating it. I would say the net numbers aren't going to change drastically in terms of this overall order of magnitude of this project. If you want to do something different, like they change a little bit, don't get me wrong. But I think this is sort of an order of magnitude. If you want to get your district mostly off of power, this is one way to do it.
any idea how much extra it would cost to move it with the full field with adding a few poles?
So I don't think the net cost would be higher. I think if we put it up there, we might just do a smaller system here at the high school and do a separate system at the middle school. I think there's a little bit of economy of scale, but we're probably talking like 5% plus or minus. So meaning two separate systems might cost 5% more too. to have one system up at the school and a separate.
Can the whole array not be up on the other field?
Not as easily, and I'm not even sure that there's enough space to get to the. It's not as easy to get.
Okay.
Those panels without doing some cutting.
That's all ledge up there as well.
Oh, all right.
I mean, I would say, is there a thought that this might be used as, because honestly, if you were like, hey, this might be a future something, I would say don't put it there.
I mean, it's a nice space. I'm not gonna deny that. I don't know that we have plans for anything.
You did, that was a good answer. That was good.
But, you know, that's a ways out.
If this was, yeah, right, if the elementary school is gonna move here or something. If there's even a thought of that, then I would say back here and whether,
Yeah. Well, yeah.
What about a hybrid between the roof and the other corner?
yeah, that we could do that. as well.
Going on.
And again, that will change the numbers a little bit. And we could, if you said, don't use this site, do it, if the board directs us to look at that, I'll adjust these numbers, but I don't think they're gonna move the needle drastically, in my opinion.
Anything else on the solar array at this point? Thanks, Mike.
I will say, in fact, we've done 5 different designs on the site. We think this is the best one, but we're definitely open to looking at it. I just wanted to give you this information, whether you're gonna make a decision tonight or just carry this forward into budget. See, I just want to explain this again, just as a reminder. The first, if you go to the totals, which are the bolded rows, option 1 is all the yellow items which includes propane boilers for 4,872,260,000 in savings and 1.2 million in potential grants and rebates, including the solar, which is where a lot of that's coming from. Down below, I call that option 1, and I give you an option of financing it at 15 years at 5.5%, which would be, you'd be borrowing 3.6 million. You would have annual lease payments of 359,000, and the budget impact per year would be 99,000 per year. The difference is I'm taking that 359 and I'm subtracting the 260,000 in annual energy savings. The next line, option 2, right below it, is a lease to do dehumidification in the entire school district, or sorry, in the entire high school. That would be 3.8 million. It would have annual lease payment of 379,000, and the budget impact would be essentially the same because there's very little energy savings. There are energy savings, but they're pretty much offset by adding dehumidification, which is a higher electric load. So that was something that was brought up as, could we, if you did a warrant article this year or next year to do HVAC system here, you'd be asking the voters for 3.8 million, and it would increase your budget the following year by 379,000 under this option. The second option columns, the second row here, it says option 1. It's the same exact 2 projects, except we're financing them over 20 years instead of 15. This is just like a mortgage at home. The rate is a little bit higher. It's 0.7 of a point higher. But you pay more in interest just because it's a longer term. And so with this, your lease payment would go down to 303,000 for the yellow projects with gas, and your budget impact would be 43,000. The reason I'm calling the budget impact 33,000 is because what I would recommend you do is you add a lease debt service line of 303,000, or maybe you round it up to 305, and then you would reduce your energy budget by about 260,000 under this. That would be your how you'd make the budget adjustment. What we would have to talk about is that's what it would look like every year. your very first year is a little bit trickier because you don't get the full year's energy savings. And so we would just have to think about how you would maybe sometimes we do a lower payment the very first year and then it steps up every other year. So that's something that could be done in the budget by changing those lines, and we would probably have to talk about that at the budget workshop. The other thing that we did down below is we said, if you added wood heat, the cost is $2,513,000. The energy savings is $49,000. There's an additional rebate of $800,000, but we won't likely know if we'll get that rebate until the spring, which makes it somewhat hard to think about how to budget that. If you did that, then you take out the next line, which is the cost associated to make propane the primary source. You take out the savings associated with propane, and you take out the rebates associated with propane. So the net cost to do everything with wood or biomass as the primary is $5,700,000. Your energy savings increases to $284,000, and your grants and rebates increase from 1.2 million with the propane design to 1.9 million, or almost $2 million. If you were to lease those, which I'm calling option 3, over 15 years, your budget impact would be $97,000 per year. Over 20 years, your annual budget impact would be $33,000 per year. So I know that's a lot of information, but I tried to lay it out in a way that it would be helpful when thinking about how to budget for this. And whether you do it in the budget, whether you do separate warrant articles. So, yeah.
Go ahead, Joe.
Let me see if I got this straight here.
Yeah.
So you have the wood heat there for the alternate at the 2.5 million.
Yeah.
That's just for the one school or for both?
That's for both schools.
Okay, so what's the biomass?
That's also wood heat. That's the biomass is just another word for them. So basically, if you start with the yellow, let me just walk you through that.
You're just saying that so you're just going, the total there is 5 million.
Yes.
Okay, now I got, thank you.
Yeah.
Did you have a question, Steve? Sorry.
No, just,
Okay. That's fine.
sorry, thank you.
No.
So sorry, one more.
Go ahead.
So you said option, if we did with the bio heat, it's 97,000 for the 15 years and 33 for the 20 year?
Correct. And even though you're paying more each year, you're gonna save 5 years worth of interest. So it's kind of like why you do a 15-year mortgage. Like I have a 15-year mortgage on my house just because of that. I'm paying a little more now, but the outer years, I'm gonna get some benefit.
And there's still the option of paying it off early, correct?
Yeah, so at any point during the lease, with I think a 1% premium on the remaining balance is the typical term, you can pay the entire amount off early. And I mentioned Newfound Schools, that's exactly what they just did. They did, so they got a federal grant and they used that federal grant to pay off $1 million lease payment early. So you probably wouldn't do it in year one because you're borrowing, $3 million. You're probably not gonna have a $3 million, but I could see toward those outer years, paying it off with, as it gets down to 700,000 left, 800,000, just paying it all off. The other thing that people have done with leases is right now we're at 5.5, 5.7. If in 3 years, 4 or 5 years from now, interest rates come back to 3%, which is where we were seeing in 2017, 2018. In fact, when we were presenting this project to this board in that time, the rates were around 2.5, 3%. So if they come back down there again, you could then refinance this entire deal and pay at that point, if you had a surplus that year, pay and reduce your principal. So hopefully interest rates will be lower and you could refinance that at some point in the future.
I know I'd asked Terry, and I think Terry talked to Mike about, we have each year, historically, we've returned money to the taxpayers.
Yeah.
And my question was, what if we wanted to say 250,000 in the summer of 26, reduce that lease. And we just have to have it in the contract up front that we would do that, and what would that impact be?
That's right.
Because my thinking is, if we could do something along that, 20 years would be the better route.
Yeah.
Because if we're able to periodically pay off some of that lease
Yeah.
early, we would get the benefit of that save, only paying, what is it, the budget impact would be 33,000
Yeah.
early. And if we could pay it off periodically downward,
I do have one very specific example where I agree that that would have to be in your contract with the bank. And, but I have known when we were with this, there was a totally different board members. When we talked about this in 2017, they were specifically, had it passed, they were going to use 300,000 from surplus that year toward a down payment, just to bring down. I also have had districts go out and say, we would like the ability to, whether it's a line item in the budget or with the warrant article, say a lease amount of 319 for up to 20 years. And then when you get the actual quotes back, because I'm using estimates, these rates are only good for 30 days, so they're gonna go up or down between now and March. It's very common for, like, in April, when you're actually looking to sign this contract, that you know if you're gonna have a projected surplus. So I've often had districts say, hey, we're gonna use the 2024 surplus to buy down the amount we're paying, or use the down payment, or reduce the borrowing amount. And that very first year, significant, like, in Belmont schools, for example, they passed their project, I forget what year, but they had such a surplus that year that they, I think, threw $500,000 toward this project, toward a similar project, which was actually almost even as well. Then they, went for 15 years instead of 20, because they had such a reduction that they were able to essentially, anyway, so there's ways to do that, especially if you have a projected surplus in 24.
do you have a question, Joe? Okay, I just wasn't sure with your hand. That's fine. All right. And the reason I said out further is because I wouldn't anticipate the district having much, if any, money left over in the budget we have currently, just because of the situation we're in right now. That's why I was talking about in the future, because, like I said, 26, we might be able to put 250, 28, we might be able to do something. And that's all I was looking for, is because depending on the individual board, we can't commit anything beyond, as you know, March of 24. So,
And one thing that, this is being presented as if it's one single year. Another thing that I kind of alluded to, it may be that this project passes in 2024, but it's not really completed till 2025, once you go through all the permitting. And I'm specifically thinking the solar permitting process could take a while, so that I could see that the project would start in 2024, but it wouldn't finish most likely until.
Dumb question, I'm not advocating this, but I want to throw it out there. Could you use maintenance reserve funds for a down payment? Seeing as how these boulders and that wouldn't be in the CIP, we could take some of that maintenance reserve and say, all right, we're going to commit on just
not
300,000.
not being an attorney, I would think we could,
Have a hearing and,
but I don't know if I would.
I know, I'm just,
That's
yeah,
struggling
I know, but I'm just,
by millions. Okay, what does the board like to do? I just want to make sure I think the conversation, I think, is we're looking at the wood boiler or biomass, whichever you want to go with. I'm flexible. Do we want to go with option one? I mean, option 3 of 15 years or option 3 of 20 years? And like I said, normally I would say, let's do it in 15, but if we can do it in 20, and if we can get arrangements with the lease or the bank or whoever, that we are able to do that with a small fee for that, we would be, I think, financially better off doing it that way, because obviously it's 60-something thousand dollars less to do it. The impact is that, right? Now, the question that becomes, I think before we go to the voters, we need to know, or even the budget committee, we would need to know what that first year payment.
Mhm.
Right? Because we can't go and say it's going to be, if we chose 20 years, for example, the net impact is we're going to increase our budget by 33,000.
Yeah.
You're indicating that probably might even not even be any savings the first year. Just because of the issue you raised with the solar, right?
Yes.
And I just want to make sure that, when we go to the voters, we can say to them, this is what it is after this year that we're talking about, even though we're
And I
going to
know,
start the project.
I
And
know in Greenland, so for example, they passed a project where the annual payments were gonna be 284,000. And they did, the first year payment was only gonna be 55,000 for this very same reason. Like, we were gonna do some of it.
Mm,
They weren't gonna get a full year savings. The only, and I think that's kind of what we're looking at here. I don't know the exact number, but I think you're looking at a partial payment year one. The only thing that you don't want to be accused of being kind of tricking them and saying, oh, the first year is 55 grand, next year is 319,000. Like, you just want to.
yeah, what we would do is, because, for example, the last time we had I know the middle school bond, or even the bond for the roof here, you just throw a chart up and say, this is the payments that we're expecting
Yeah.
year one, and it's lower the year one because we're not doing the whole project in year one, we're doing it in year one and two.
Yep.
And then you just say, okay, the payment is 90,000 that we're gonna budget, or whatever it might be. We're not seeing any savings, whatever it is.
Yep.
And you just outline it that way. In the article, you can't say that,
Yeah,
but in the explanation,
right.
you would be able to do that.
I've actually seen it where the warrant article is written with just the year one payment amount, because that's what was required. And and I think that's the situation where you really have to explain, even if the year one payment is a partial. It's just,
Yeah.
you just have to communicate.
Yeah, that's where the attorneys make them the money.
And that's what we did here. We had to do the year one, whatever it was. And it wasn't, we couldn't even take like the deductions from anything like that. We had to actually put down what it was costing and without savings, which is very tough to tell people, oh, this is how much it's costing. By the way, we're gonna get savings here. You just can't see it right now.
When you say savings, do you mean the grants that we're gonna be receiving to offset
Or the
that?
Estimated savings for
What's
the,
that?
or the estimated savings. We couldn't tell them. That's the biggest problem.
So in essence, we would be saying we're gonna need to, for the biomass whatever, 3.8 million, right?
I think you need to write it, if you were to do this as a
Well-
warrant, you'd write it for 5.7. Which is the full amount.
Okay.
Less, and which means you really just have to explain this.
Hmm.
I think the last time this was on the ballot, we didn't do a good enough voter explanation to explain that, even though this might be a $5 million project, the net tax impact is only 30,000.
Yeah, starting year two, right, really. Right, what's the board wish to do? Because I think what we want to do is set some direction so that we can have the administration and Mike be clear where we'd like to see, so that we can get the board to approve a warrant article, then have it presented to the budget committee soon thereafter.
I was thinking about putting it in the budget.
That's a conversation we can have.
I just want to make sure I get this. So option 3, having wood boilers in both schools. The other biomass one is. Not enough, it's less savings and it costs a whole lot more money. So, I mean, I would definitely go with option 3 with the 20 years, especially where we can use savings later on.
Potentially, yeah. We'd have to work, like I said, we'd have to work out an arrangement with the bank, and if the bank is willing to do that, there's no guarantee.
Well, one,
Yeah.
just thought for the back of your minds. If the board goes to option 3, we are anticipating, which is a competitive grant of 800,000. There's a chance that we get that 800,000, a decent chance. There's also a chance we only get 400,000, or there's a chance we get 0. So one question for the board will be like, if everyone says option 3 is the primary and we don't get the grant, do we then wait and reapply for the grant in October of 24 and stick with wood? And maybe we do the solar and the lighting and, or do we just do? I don't know if you need to make that, but you may not, if you decide to do a warrant, you might not want to write it so restrictively. Or if you write it restrictively, we'll, if we get the grant, we either have to do the project without the grant or reapply again in October.
If you took the 800 out, what would that impact be? Ballpark, Mike?
I can do that math. I just gotta
If
go
you
back.
could, yeah, that's fine.
So will you
Just
guys,
so that we know what that impact would be.
I just want to confirm too, the option, so sorry, I had to step out.
That's
with that. 3 is all of the solar and wood versus propane. That's what option 3 is?
Yeah, the only difference for 3 is you take the propane out from above, and you insert the wood.
Yeah, so that's
boiler
why the
for both.
7.6 comes down to 5.7.
We still have propane just as a backup.
Right, yeah, that's the case
But
with
that,
both,
I just wanted
right?
to make sure it was all of it wrapped up. It kind of looked like that,
Yep.
but there's a lot of options here.
Mm-hmm. Terry, do you have a recommendation as to? You went and saw it, the boiler.
Yeah. As to what we do, in my mind, I think wood is the way to go. I think the price is gonna be, and I'm not a guru with this, but I buy pellets 3 tons at a time and it's been pretty steady. There's been no up and down. It is what it is. So I think that's the way to go.
Did we have a conversation with John Stark about what they've been purchasing and how much?
20 tons a week, right? Pretty much once a week.
But yeah, solid once a week, once every other week, depending on the temperature.
Yeah, but I'm just about cost.
I don't think we.
Have they seen much fluctuation of?
I don't.
Okay, if we could just, the future,
Yeah, I
when
don't.
we have conversations with the voters, we can talk about.
we
That's
could do
what-
that. Part of the issue, the gentleman who was leading the tour was brand new to that facility.
Oh, it's fine. I just was thinking about not only for our information, but also when we go to the voters to say, because not a lot of people necessarily are familiar enough with this way of doing things.
It sounds silly too. There's more maintenance, but this maintenance is Todd and I talked that we can do. Whereas when the boiler, propane boiler shuts down.
Yeah.
We're out.
HVAC.
We're out. You call the man.
Barry was saying he could do the maintenance.
Yeah.
Plowing and
He's
HVAC.
saying this is so easy, I could do it.
He's gonna come in with a big vacuum on his
Chris's
back.
van up in the old van, I'm running his old van.
There you go.
There he's plowing and
So-
ash shoveling.
But but before you, go ahead.
I didn't think you said ash.
I did.
So
I enunciated too.
and this might be a silly question, but I assume that the silo that the wood pellets or the biomass, whatever you want to call them, are stored in is weatherproof, fireproof, and it's got a fire rating.
Like 11 gauge galvanized steel. structure.
Okay.
Old fashioned grain
I
element.
mean, that's always like the big problem if you store
25
pellets
feet
in
or
your
so
house,
high.
right? You're basically putting a fuel source in the middle of a fire.
It's on like a 24 by 24 pad, was it?
20 pad.
Okay.
Everything loaded.
But it's sectionalized. It's like, is it about 11 gauge if I had to
No,
guess?
not the boiler. I mean, the actual.
No, you're talking about the silo.
Yeah, Silo itself, yeah. It's
Okay,
An old
Constructed out of,
Made out of tin.
Yeah.
yeah. That's, yeah,
it was.
kind of assumed it had to be.
Big sturdy,
Yeah.
structure.
But use
So the
the
safety.
silo
there's no
of-
It's not gonna
question.
fall over, no,
Yeah.
it's not like a big grain.
And it's not like a
Wait a minute.
spark's gonna.
Let's have one. Yep. Okay. All right. Cindy, did you have anything?
And if it did, it's contained
I
in
just
this
hope
thing.
they're
and just-
replanting trees.
Oh, no.
They know how to
Corn stalks
replant,
too
right?
eventually.
So if we got no grant whatsoever and financed it for 20 years, the annual impact would be about $80,000. Now,
So before you go further, 80,000, so as opposed to
30,
option 3,
option 3, 20
as
years,
opposed to 33 and a half.
Yeah.
It would go up to,
80,000.
And that's worst case scenario.
Now, that's the worst case. What I would recommend is if the board really wants wood and we can do this over a 2-year period and we lose the grant this year, I would say we reapply again next year and wait 1 more year on oil. And that,
that's Cindy.
Question, is that grant all or nothing? Like, you get it or you don't get less.
for me, it always has been. I think technically the PUC could negotiate, but I think they've always done, for us, it's always been all or nothing.
Go ahead, Terry.
Every time you've applied, how many times have you not gotten it?
Yeah.
once in 12 years we've got.
Did they reapply and get it, or they just went without?
Yeah, they reapply.
And then they got it in? Okay.
Sorry, out of how many grants?
Ballpark.
Oh.
Yeah, that sounds like, we're talking one or two.
We've done 12 or 13.
Okay.
So we've done, every year, we've got at least one prize,
Oh, but-
including last year that we're doing this year.
All right, I gotta ask one more. I'm sorry. Now, how many other companies are putting these in schools in Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont? I mean, are you guys pretty much it, or how competitive is it?
I'll have to answer that on the record with that. No, we in New Hampshire, we are the leader in biomass systems. In Vermont as well. In Maine, there's a lot of competitive.
Okay, I'm just curious how competitive they're getting.
That's, yeah, is that the region that we'd be competing against?
So, yeah, oh, no, this is just a New Hampshire grant application. It's
Okay.
Just New Hampshire. But to my knowledge, Newfound Schools is the only other one that applies.
That, it's a New Hampshire grant, but all that grant money's coming from the feds.
Right.
Out of the country though, basically it's New England and maybe, Minnesota, Wisconsin are typically doing this stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, it shrinks the
This
pool.
This grant is an annual 1.6 million that the state gives out for wood heat. Why they get, I don't know. It's 1.6 million. So we're applying for about half of their annual funding. I could see a scenario where we get one of two. I could see that.
One of the two schools?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tony.
So this is like little to no emission system too, right? I mean, I didn't notice, not like a wood stove burning off. I didn't notice anything when we were there.
It does have an emission, but it's a lot of times when we think of wood stoves and having, dirty fuel. So for example, like, the American Lung Association is very active in Keene, which is a big valley, because people have these wood stoves that fill that air and it just doesn't clear out. So the American Lung Association and EPA had a program in Keene to get people to change their wood stove for more efficient wood stoves. The emissions are much similar to an oil boiler because we're burning a very clean fuel. So unlike a wood stove at home where you're taking stuff you find outside and burning it, a lot of times those are outdoor boilers that are those really poor performing ones. We're going to burn here essentially a kiln dried, more like a pellet product. So it's a very so therefore the emissions are much cleaner because you're burning a very pure product.
No, set, Tony. Go ahead, Steve.
So two questions. Has anyone had any supply issues for 20 ton a month that they're buying?
We had talked about, it was I think the John Stark is a 14-ton silo. Yeah, I think you will be doing about 20 ton or more a month.
Has anyone run into any issues with supply?
Any issues? Yes, but similar to the types of issues that you would have with the propane guy was late and they ran low. So there would be a backup fuel system here. I will say your bigger issue, one, you get a supply contract. There's only 2 vendors in the state that supply these types of wood chips, dry chips. So that has been a concern for previous boards, because what if that other company goes out of business and you only get one bidder? And of the 2 vendors, and I hate to say this publicly, one is far better than the other. So there's one company, Froling, that does kiln dried, and they have this great truck that comes out, and that's who it delivers to almost all my customers except for Plymouth. There's another company that goes up to Henniker and they essentially air dry the product, and then they subcontract with a company to blow it up. And that company we've had supply issues with, because when you're relying on the air to dry things out versus you just don't get as consistency product. So the downside of the dry chips are, there's really one excellent supplier. There's two, but there's one who does it, in my opinion, right. They're in team. So one of the concerns has been, what if they go out of business? This entire system can be converted to a pellet and use pellets. So that has been, when boards have asked that supply question, we've never had to do that because they've been doing this since 2016 and they've met the supply. Sometimes have they been late and you had to switch to propane for a day? Yes, but we've met the supply generally. If everything went badly and you had to switch to pellet, you still get the RECs, you still get the grant, you still get significant energy savings. It's just not as good as it'd be a little bit less because pellets are a little bit more expensive than the dry chip.
And Pearl just completed, just last year, the expansion of their plant. It's enormous state-of-the-art plant.
Not likely they're going out of business.
No, and there's a reason why the state is giving this grant. In addition to giving this grant, what's built in here is they're going to pay you every time you burn chips. So our state is trying to get people to burn wood, and Vermont as well. Vermont and Maine, all of them are paying people to burn wood because we have so much woods and lumber industries, and it's a way to support the wood. So that's why they're potentially paying you 800,000 plus 15,000 a year per building to run on.
So a second question, sorry, was if we happen to get half the grant, can you go back and ask for the other half? Okay. I didn't know if it was like a one-time deal.
Tony, you had something?
Oh, no, I just,
Okay, that's fine. All right. Go ahead.
So if we went out for the lease now, I mean, we may not see the savings right now, but that would only impact the other side of the,
Well, yeah, theoretically, you could put the full lease payment in your budget and just partial savings. I mean, that's another legitimate, you could say year one lease payment is 317, year one energy savings is 70 grand. You're not getting the full, you will just do all the lighting and get all that done. So for example, the lighting, which is not lead time, there's 50,000 in energy savings that we could definitely do without a doubt. It's not subject to permits or anything other than local. So you could pay the first year, but only get partial savings. What I normally see boards do is just do a partial lease payment and partial savings. But you could do full lease payment if you just wanted to show it for transparency.
and if we did that, the lease payment would still be the,
Yeah, you could put this full lease payment, year one, in the budget, absolutely. And the partial savings, and then you just have to explain that the rest of the savings will come here too.
Okay.
Or theoretically, I don't know if you could do this, but you could put the full lease payment in the budget, but then only have to make 3/4 of the payment or whatever, if you can do that legally. Just to show them, if you're worried about showing them that level payment and not showing the budget committee 50 grand this year on partial and then 300 next year. I've had districts do all of these.
one other question.
Go ahead.
Option one with all the yellow, 20 years, budget impact would be 43,362.
Yeah.
So with the savings and stuff like that we see because of wood, it goes down to 32,503.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's the board like to do?
I think we should put in the budget. I mean, we could easily do the full, $33,000 for the full lease payment is,
I would be of the opinion, just because we're asking the voters to get in an investment that we've never done before, I would look at it as a warrant article so that they can weigh in on it and give them the option. That's where I'm at.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So if you put it in the budget, you would take what the number is right now for the budget and then add the 33,000 or?
Well, we would add a payment of the
The full 317.
317,880, and then we will reduce definitely the lighting or electrical, right? By the, whatever we anticipate the district reducing or the middle school and high school. I don't want to say district. And then if we think there's any other places that we would save, then we would reduce those lines. But otherwise, it would be that 317 minus, what was it, 50?
50 for the lighting, yeah, and then I'm guessing some of these other smaller projects, you could probably get it up. 65. And there's also a chance the wood chip gets in. I just wouldn't want to, I'd want you to have some flexibility in case we,
Yeah, we don't want to go to the voters and say, yeah, this is what we're definitely doing. And then, whoops.
Yeah.
Because then we don't have the money, right? Because we have to make the payment regardless of that. But
So, just trying to figure it out. So as far as like what I just said, if you wanted to put it in the budget, I get that. So is it either or, either you put it in the budget or we do a warrant article?
yeah, I think those are the only two options
Okay.
we can.
I didn't know if you did
Nope.
both or,
Nope,
you know,
nope.
how that
one
works.
thing has been, when we were dealing with Hollis Brookline, and again, ask you, one thing that we were told is if you put in the warrant article, boiler project, and it fails, that interpretation from that lawyer was, there's some new law that they call it no means no.
No, yeah.
And that means that you can't spend any money on the boilers that year. Maybe you could do an emergency repair, but you couldn't then say, oh, we have surplus, let's do the boiler project. Like, that would mean you definitely can't, you'd have to ask again to do it.
It's gonna work out. And no, it doesn't, you know.
Well, we have, yeah,
Um,
anyways, go ahead.
Yeah.
You all set, Cindy?
I had another question.
Go ahead.
Okay, so that's, and I thought answers part of the question. So if you put this in the budget, I'm just thinking because the budget's already high. It would be more. It would be that, like you said, the 300,000 more, then you subtract the other stuff. So the thing that we would see would be the bottom line, right?
You most definitely have a lease line of some.
So we might add like 200,000 rather
Yes.
than 300 something thousand.
Yeah, but the budget line item would have to be the whole amount, right? It would have to show that that's the lease payment.
It would be in the budget like that anyhow.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have an offset to make it lower, but the line item would actually read the full 317, correct?
Go ahead, Marjorie. What would it look like in the budget? The line item would be the lease for the 317
Correct. And then we would reduce the electricity and the oil.
at least, and then what, depending on whatever Mike adds in that he knows we can get in the fiscal year of.
Just trying to think of how it was worded back in 2017. I didn't pull it up this morning. So.
I think there was one after that.
It was in 2020.
That wasn't here in 2017.
2020 was the last time it was
Do
done.
you have any town reports in there anymore?
Oh, you just go
I mean,
on.
the only thing I'm looking at is, you know, of course, you don't want to spend more money,
2020.
but
Yeah. that's what-
if the current things are 40 years old, you know you're going to be spending money soon. So,
I think the biggest thing, like Mike said, is that we have to have that whole number when we put it in the warrant article, and it's because we have so many people who
Yeah.
watch us and come to our meetings. We're trying to explain to everybody that, yes, you'll see this savings and we get these rebates and stuff like that. And that was the biggest thing. I mean, we went to, and we put it out there quite a bit. We did a video on it. We did all that stuff. I think when most people get to the voting booths and say, this is what it is. $3 million. No, I mean,
right, I get, yeah, because a lot of times people don't.
So what are the implications if we put it in the budget versus doing the warrant article?
$300 and something thousand.
Uh,
We have to put in it because we can't see the savings right now because we don't know exactly what they would be.
So essentially, we'd have to amend the budget for next year, or would that be the following year?
Well, we would if we were to choose to go the route of in the operating budget, we would let the budget committee know that we're adding a line here and we're reducing these other lines or line
Right.
by this amount.
Okay,
And the explanation is, this is what the explanation is.
okay.
Go ahead, Tony.
I just want to make a point to say that I am not a fan of asking for permission for things that we can just do. Cause historically that doesn't really work out in our favor. I'm all for input and getting people's opinion, but I think if we really want to do this, putting it out to a warrant article is a risky move.
Glad you.
Here's the one, the article said for the installation of up to $1.743 million last time.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the biggest thing right there. People saw the $1.7 million and went, oh,
So how do you word it so people that,
we can't. We looked at trying to word that.
and how many?
We did put savings down. We said further raise and appropriate this for annual lease payments. We had guaranteed energy savings will be, and then the budget impact if this passes would have been 59,478 back then. But you have to put that $1.7 million right up front and say, this is what the entire lease is for.
Yeah, the concern really is people aren't looking deep enough to see the whole picture and they just see that one number and it scares them.
You can't put down, we looked at, can we put down how long will everything be paid back and when we will start making even extra savings off of it? We can't put any of that down. That's,
We
well,
put a warrant article out to pay the deputy treasurer a $500 stipend that got voted down.
yeah, it costs it more to have the argument about it.
I mean, come on.
I guess I would be on the same page as, it sounds like Joe and Tony about, I'd rather see it something, if there's a no means no, and we put it in once and they vote it down and then we're kind of stuck, we can't go back for another year. It just feels like we're risking a much larger potential benefit across time, savings, more efficiencies.
And we
When
can,
folks aren't gonna, it feels like folks don't traditionally dig in for the information. They get the surface numbers, they see the big scary number, which is a big scary number.
Because we can't reach all the people.
Right,
I mean, what do we get? Maybe a couple hundred if we're lucky and then 4,000 people vote.
right.
It's just, and then they see taxes already higher than they want them.
Well,
And
and
then they see a giant number. And they're like, yeah, no.
in the budget, the potential tax implication here, even at the 317 is what, 20 cents? You say 135,000 for 10 cents?
It's, the impact would be 23.5 cents.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's without including the reductions.
Correct. I
Right.
put in the whole number.
Yeah, so the
if you take
max it
50
goes
out,
up.
It's gonna be probably in the 20-cent range.
Right, so it feels less.
Swallowed in 5.7
It
million.
feels less, yeah, it feels less impactful when it's in that spot than it is as a $5.7 million.
it's not the 5.7, it would be the 3 point.
Or whatever the number is. It
No,
could be
no,
47.50.
Three-
People are like,
I thought it was
I don't know about
317.
this.
it's,
Well, 317,000, sorry, would be the.
it's the $5 million number, right? Mike?
Yeah, it'd be 5,000,007 is the total project cost, is 1,900,000.
Okay.
And that's why you get
We
the
can't put that in the.
difference. Yeah, we can't put in the rebates, so.
Right, especially where that half of that's the 800,000 we're not sure about.
One of the problems I have is if the budget loses, this doesn't happen.
Mm.
If you give the voters the option in the warrant article, they can vote yes to one, vote yes to both, or vote one down and one up. So, or any combination thereof. I think that gives, in this year, where the budget is where it is, I think we're running the risk of losing this opportunity.
I believe even if we put this in the budget, we are going to be lower on our budget than the default budget.
Maybe
Oh, that's interesting.
until I see the numbers,
But what if you get the default budget?
then it would be higher.
It would be
But
higher.
Joe is saying he thinks it's gonna be higher.
But you
So-
wouldn't get this program if you do the default budget.
No, that's not necessarily true.
Oh.
Because we as a budget, or the school board, excuse me, on July 1st, if we get a budget of the default, we decide where the money goes
Oh,
ultimately. Except for anything that's contractually we're obligated to do, then we're due those. And then the other things, it's all optional for us as to where we spend the money.
So we could buy $28 million worth of meatballs.
It's all the food
Like 12
problem.
boxes.
12 boxes, I
You've
think.
got to be willing to eat meatballs, right?
Gold plated. Who doesn't like?
Joke from a year ago.
All right.
So with the lease with no savings, how much would it be again? For 3 years?
317.
Yeah, 17,000.
That bottom number. The worst case scenario, that gets added in with, and we know it wouldn't be, but with zero savings. If this was a complete,
That's the way we would have to do it the first year,
But
in my
the,
mind.
And like, what if we don't get the grants? Then we pay all of it.
So in my mind, this is my opinion here. If you had a $317,000 thing and you lost the grants, we could either apply again for those grants, or you could go back to the propane primary design.
So we
You know,
would
what-
have time for that.
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
In a warrant article, we'd have to put the whole thing in, correct? The
5.7
whole,
million.
and it would be an all or nothing situation.
Mhm.
But if I'm hearing you, and I think it makes sense, if we put it in the budget and we don't quite get all of it, or however you want to look at it, we have the option to look at part of it. But we'll have no options if we get a warrant article that gets defeated. I think we have more flexibility in the budget because let's say we don't, just for simple math, if we don't get approved for the additional 317, but somehow we get half of it, we could then say, okay, well, we'll do all the solar and we'll do the lighting. But if we put in a warrant article and they say, no, we can't do any of it, right?
Yeah, it's not really, because the last one actually had, I believe, the switches. For all the schools and stuff like that, which we ended up having to do anyhow. Yeah, the heat control, oh, sorry,
Yeah, we did this school,
yeah, so
big chunk out of the plan.
and that was one of the things that was in the other plan that got said no, but
But that was in the warrant article that got defeated, you said.
correct, but the warrant articles for the lease at the one point, it's not for just certain things. We wouldn't put it in there for just the boilers, because then if the boiler blew, we,
No, my question is, and I'm sorry if I didn't say it right. If we put in a warrant article for the whole project and that gets defeated, we can't do any of that work because of this no means no rule,
Correct.
right? So if we can't do any of it, that means we can't look at solar, we can't look at LED lighting, we can't look at switches without taking it out of the current budget. But if we put it in the budget versus a warrant article and we don't get everything we want, we still might be able to do some of that work.
I believe we're able to do the work anyhow because we were able to do
Okay.
stuff
It
here.
doesn't stop us from being able to do it in other ways. That's, I'm
You
just,
just couldn't go lease it and do all the whole, I mean, it would be impossible for us to do it anyhow.
right. I just wanted to make sure we still had options if for some reason we put it in an article and it gets defeated.
Like Terry was saying, we have, what, $800,000, I think, set aside in our CIP
I think so, yeah.
for boilers at the high school. I mean, they will be 40 years.
We don't have that much there. No, we have,
Well, how much are they gonna cost now, I should say?
There's a line item in there. There's a line item in CFP for boilers, I don't think it's in. The money's not acquired yet.
But how much was that line at? Do you remember offhand? I thought it was 800 grand, but
I'm trying to pull it up now.
looking at these, that might be a little far off. Yeah, grand now, but
It should match up to this.
Yeah, I don't have it right here, but we can get it through. I know we did that in July. Going back in time. Running commentary for anybody that wants to hear me talk. These mice are awful quiet around here,
I mean,
making me nervous.
when we're done with my laptop over there, I can pull it up.
I'm just pulling it up now. I've got the, from July. In the equipment, we begin the year 24-25 with about $1 million in maintenance.
but how much was I thought we had the boiler specifically,
I can get there, but I was just talking about the total.
because that was coming up, I thought.
But don't forget, it's not, it just tells us how much we have to be spending in a year. And Air conditioning, energy recovery systems, that's not the boiler, right? Okay, I just want to make sure. Leach fields. I don't, for some reason, full upgrades, electrical.
Line 48 boiler upgrades,
Okay,
and they're in 25, 26.
How much?
The high school is 436,000, the middle school is 402,000, and the elementary school is 400.
yeah, we don't, so about 800 in
Yes.
CIP to spend that we don't really have that money right now. We have it just for that, and that would exhaust everything with that pretty much.
I'm gonna throw another little thing in here. What if I know there was discussion on default and all that. What if we could wait till Wednesday? And then
Next Wednesday?
Yeah, we'd have that
Default.
default,
Yes.
so then it could help drive
Yes,
the decision.
We'll know the default next Wednesday.
But you'll probably know it Thursday when Jen sends it out to you in the packet, Thursday or Friday,
but for
the meeting.
it's on the agenda.
Yeah.
So that we get it, Wednesday, the first, fifth, sixth, yeah, thank you. Because it's the 6th and the 20th.
If we have to come back to the budget meeting, the 6th, we have the.
All right. What would the board like to do? Because we can make a decision. It's from Mike. At what point would we know the information regarding,
That's why I'm not getting it.
If he's stuck out there.
It's Todd.
Yeah, the
Should have a key.
He's got a key.
hopefully the maintenance guy can get in.
There.
Man key won't work. He has to use the real key.
We were talking about how if you can get us information by Wednesday night, is that possible? Regarding what do you think we could, if we didn't get the grant for the boiler or any questions about the wood part, we get the 50,000 for the lighting in the middle school and high school. What other things do you think we would be savings in that? All right. So does it make sense we'll add an agenda item for Wednesday night to take action on this after the default budget is discussed? Would that make sense for everybody?
Makes sense.
Okay.
And for that, I don't think we would need Mike that night, correct? I don't think you were going to be available anyways. So makes that conversation easy, Mike.
It does.
Might need Todd, but I can't. All right, that makes sense for everybody. We'll revisit this on the agenda on Wednesday night after the default budget is brought up. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
You.
Does that make sense?
Thanks, Todd.
Okay, all right. I don't think there's anything else. Terry, do you have anything else? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Joe.
Was talking to Terry the last couple of days because I've been hearing a lot of people talk about the water tower. The water tower, where to put it, all that stuff. They've come up with several places that I've heard that where to put it. Why don't we put it out front here? Right next to the water pipeline that runs right down the driveway.
You mean the town
At least,
tower?
I don't know.
at least think about it.
Location would
I'm not even,
service, I mean, obviously you need a tower, but I don't know if that location would be, it's good high ground, but I don't know if that would.
I mean, it's not that far away from the one that
Right.
has to be taken down.
Sorry, you're talking about the town's water tower, the one that was on the hullabaloo last year.
I don't think they've looked at here.
Has that been, I haven't followed. Part of the issue has been where to put it.
Well, they could have asked, hey, how about, I thought they were looking at every property, but I mean.
well, they weren't bashful about getting a well here.
I know.
I mean,
You're right.
Right, I mean-
Water's a lot of, yeah, you're, well, it
Sounds
goes
good right now.
here.
Are they?
I'm pretty sure.
that they had a,
That's the one committee I haven't been following strictly.
they were, yeah, they were, the agenda was they were hoping to wrap up by 6:15, but anyways. Yeah, I think the school district has always been open to help. So just that the town has always been willing to help us, so.
Personally, my only stipulation would be you have to have a nice ram on the top of it. Raymond Ram.
Where are you gonna put that? Right out here on the ledge?
Oh, I don't know. Well, location, we'll have to figure out.
Go, cause it's gotta be high ground.
Well, yeah, but doesn't one have to be that?
I don't think we need to, I think if we, Tony's heard it. He can bring it back to his, the other side of his life.
I'll say, hey, we got all this land we want.
I would say all this land.
Little patch here and there, you know.
Should I say, hey, is there any,
Is there any
attractive
consideration?
property? What, the high school?
What's that?
Have they looked at it? I mean, I don't think they've
I don't know.
considered any,
I don't know.
you know.
Because there are, I don't, I'm not even gonna get into this. I know there's all kinds of ramifications as to where you put it, why you put it where.
Right.
But anyways,
But I mean,
before we go any further,
Make some.
all right. Tony's been made aware. Thank you. You might want to reach out to the, if you could, the town manager and just say, as they looked at it,
We chatted.
okay, all right. Just so that it's
Yep.
it's an option and I don't know if it's viable for them.
I don't
I don't know if it's viable for us because,
don't either.
you know, if we're putting a solar array out there, then
Yep.
that's,
What happens to that?
yep. right.
Water and electricity.
All right. Anything else? If nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Second.
Second by Steve. All those in favor?
I
Thank you, everybody.
Can I say